I think it is important for us to be aware what the implications really are, and are we going to be forced to sever a relationship that was entered into by two sovereign states because of another sovereign state that has no relationship with the two.
We note those concerns, member, and we will pass them on to the relevant ministry.
All right. I think we've covered your notes. I think there are two issues that are not covered in here that I know members may want to look at. Number one, we recognize that the sums set aside for the re-verification process have been taken out of the budget. There was 700 million to start the re-verification this year. It was something that the Minister of Finance championed greatly in earlier days. We'd like to know why it was taken out, and obviously this would mean that the re-verification cannot commence.
Yes, Chairman, there was, what was it, 700 million?
700
that was
million,
allocated yes, for re-verification. And if you recall, it was, the plan was that it would start late in the financial year. So at this point in time, with 3 months to go, it is not likely to start in this financial year. And as such, we have reduced it. We have reprioritized the budget, and we made a recommendation that activity be taken out of this budget.
What I'm getting at, just as a member of Parliament, is this a decision taken at the Ministry of Finance, or was this a decision taken at the EOJ? Is it that the EOJ or the EAC does not believe that it can start this year, and therefore has recommended to you that this be put off? Or is it that the EOJ is ready to commence, but the Ministry of Finance has redirected the funds?
I think it would be safe to say that the Ministry of Finance has reprioritized the budget, Chairman, because of all the other new and new initiatives and new demands that came to the fore after the budget was approved. So we looked at areas that we could reprioritize and reallocate resources from to other areas that were of a higher priority.
Chairman.
And that's what we made. We looked at this, we made a recommendation, and it was accepted.
I don't think there can be anything more important than the electoral process, which gives us a free and fair election. So, and what I'm getting at, though, is there's nothing from the EOJ that indicated they were not capable of doing it. This was a decision taken on a policy level at the Ministry of Finance and Public Service.
And Chairman, we are not saying that the re-verification will not happen. We're saying that we had made provision for the start of it in the latter part of the current financial year, and what we have done is to push that forward, given the time that is left in the financial year.
Well, we could have seen a cut in it rather than elimination. This,
Chairman, I don't think we should treat this lightly, and it's really ironic because, as you recall, when the minister was on the opposition benches, he fought strenuously for this re-verification process to start. We are going to be in breach of the law. We are going to be in breach of the law because the law requires that every 10 years you go through this process. And the ECJ has been ready to start. In fact, the funds were to enable the kickstart of the pilot, which should be coming to a completion shortly under their own schedule. so that we could start early in the calendar year for the entire island. This is a serious matter. We do not want to get back to the stage where political parties are questioning the legitimacy of our list and our elections. This is a priority. The country doesn't want to go back. And that was the point the now Minister of Finance was making. But the law now requires it. It's 10 years. Those IDs should come to an end at December 2017. I see that they have extended them, but it is unlawful for us not to do so. If we go back to questioning our list and our elections, then we're going back to those dark ages. And so therefore this removal requires, and we're coming back later, it's going to require some serious response. And I'm certainly going to be pushing for it to be instituted so that the work can start as they have planned at the ECJ.
And as you indicated, the ID cards that all of us have expire this year. And, you know, and in a legal, while the statement has gone out that they will be honored to 19, the fact of the matter is that the actual card, when you carry it in, really does not, will have the date. I have Member Vaz and Member Holness. Member Vaz, you want to use another microphone? That one doesn't seem to. Turn off that one.
So, I just need a clarification on the recommendation. I know initially when the 700 million was allocated, it was to begin the process. So is it that now you're recommending that that same 700 be placed in the budget next year, or you're recommending that the entire amount required to do the re-verification is placed in next year's budget? Just a clarification.
Chairman, what we had before us was the $700 million, and we recommended that it be rolled over into the next financial year. So I am assuming that if we were going to be starting in this financial year, it means that the activity would have been ongoing in the new financial year. As to whether they can spend everything in 1 year, that is another matter, but we do know that the plan is to have the re-verification program begin next year.
Member Holness.
Chairman, I'm wondering if I'm in an alternate reality, because I remember coming before in this year, and when we were less polarized, we looked at having to introduce a national identification system and having the discussion as to whether or not it made sense that we look at things like the voters' IDs and going to a place of a national ID. I remember we went as deep as looking at even registration, debt, and census was discussed. And the idea behind it was that something like the ID, and I'm not just talking about the re-verification process, is an ID we could have said, and we were in agreement at the time, allow the ID to extend in terms of its time frame, so that we would not have been in a place as a country that we are asking that we put in a national identification at one cost and repeat that procedure through doing the voters' IDs as well. I remember we had such a discussion. So I would love to know if there is no merit from us taking the position to make recommendations to the policymakers that in the interest of efficiency, in the interest of saving costs, our country does not do the same thing twice.
Just 1 second. Member Holness, the idea of IDs is one thing. The re-verification exercise is a totally different one that has to be done by the electoral office, which ensures the veracity of our electoral system. No matter what you put in as a overriding, but at the root of it is to ensure that there's confidence in your electoral system. And I'm just saying there are legal implications, and what we're simply saying is that no matter what you do, this re-verification must take place.
And I'm saying, Chairman, that that re-verification process could be done at the same time of the registration of persons via the National Identification System. Because at that same time that you are coming on the National Identification System, and possibly through the use of the same electoral office and Commission of Jamaica, we would be in a place where the people who are on the voters list can be registered through the National Identification System, re-verified at the same time, and it is one composite cost.
Chairman, I have to fundamentally disagree, even though I know the discussion took place. Firstly, for our electoral system, I don't want us to be borrowing money to fund it. The Jamaican people should pay for it out of its budget. That is one. Secondly, the needs has now been caught up with controversy and doubts on the part of the public as to its implementation. That is going to take many, many months to, if not years. We do not have that luxury in relation to the operations of the ECJ. We have been able to survive very well because the Jamaican people have accepted that the ECJ has performed above reproach. We do not want it to be tied up now in a controversial scheme going forward. Let us fund them. They have been waiting on this money. They have been waiting to start the pilot. It cannot be done in 1 year. And if it's not started in this financial year, then we are going to be in serious jeopardy. We are going to be in breach of the law. And in terms of the operation, anything can happen in terms of by-elections. We need to ensure that the ECJ's business is not hampered by other considerations.
Members, I would like to get a feeling of this committee because I tend to agree with Member Paulwell, and I feel that given the situation that this decision has been taken strictly by the Ministry of Finance, I think that this committee should look at recommending to the Parliament that there be a reconsideration of the funds set aside for the verification process. I'd like to hear how the other members of the committee feel.
I will agree with you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
I am saying I agree with you. It is critical, it is fundamental to our democratic process, and it has constitutional underpinnings. So it has to be revisited, and I would support the point made by you, sir, that we reconsider it and we put it to the Parliament this afternoon.
Mr. Chair, we have an issue as to when the breach occurred, and we'd certainly have to revisit the legislation. If the breach occurred at a certain point, then we would need legislation to...
When you say the breach occurred, or it's to...
Insofar as the legislation touching when the re-verification should have taken place, because that period would have expired some time ago, and I suspect going back to 2014 or somewhere there, and we would now need to have retrospective application of the legislation before a provision can be made, because if we've breached the law, and you know the breach started some time ago, so before we start making allocations for that thing to be done, we would have We have to amend the legislation to allow us to go back to dealing with something that we ought to have done some time ago.
Yes, but in the scheme of things, that should be taken care of. The point that I think we are addressing is the budget that was cast for this year that we approved. We did approve it, you know. So are you saying that regardless? And this really ought not to be a reason for a political divide. We all agreed that it was necessary. Why at this stage it is not necessary?
The necessity is not an issue.
Oh, so let us move on.
The necessity is not an issue, but insofar as if the ministry were going to put in place a provision, it ought to have the legislative basis for so doing. We can't just, in breach of the law, say that we're going to make an allocation. I think we have to tidy up what we have to do, which, yeah, you know, so. Indeed. I will at the appropriate.
The point I was making.
No, yes.
The point I was making.
Yes, member.
Is that given the fact that we would have already been in breach of the law, and now that we are practically at the end of this year's budgetary cycle, then I see no real urgency. You know, for the next 3 months for us. Because it is mentioned by the PS that they have recommended it to be a part of next year's budget, which is 3 months away.
No, members.
So, you know.
For us just for clarity,
yes.
This was to do a pilot project. Am I correct, Mrs. Jarrett? For the re-verification. This is something that has been pushed on both sides for quite some time. We all recognize the importance of getting this done. What has happened is that it was always slated to begin late this year. I suspect that given the electoral matters, etc., there has been some delay. However, it was always expected to start in this financial year. What we have been told, which is troubling to me, is that this decision was taken at the Ministry of Finance rather than at the ECJ. The fact is the ECJ, if they are willing and able to proceed with the pilot project, I do not understand what the policy would be at the Ministry of Finance, led by a Minister of Finance who is on record for years of indicating that this is something that he feels need to be done as quickly as possible. I think it is a dangerous precedent, and I think that our trust in our electoral system is such that this is something that we should at least urge the House to reconsider.
Chairman, whilst I agree, but we also have to be mindful of the fact that it dates back to a certain point. When we breached the law, what do you agree with? Yeah, agree with the fact that we ought to at some point, at some point, but given that the ministry has made the decision, there's a number of intervening factors. The priority areas which have now been, which the ministry deems to have a greater level of priority than the one we're discussing currently.
Pushing on the drain cleaning.
No, Mr. Chairman, I think we may be trivializing the
No, I may be.
I've made an intervention. We're having significant rainfall since in my own area, I can see that I've had significant damage running into $200 million for road work and bridges and all kinds. But it has, and it's not been touched. And I really cry out now for the people in Guys Hill. who have been cut off. I've had to seek intervention from private landowners to traverse their land. And that is where we are. So there's significant intervention.
Chairman, I would say, members, let us agree on one thing. There can be no doubt that there must be cause for great concern about us postponing the re-verification process, and that greater clarity must be given by both the ministry and the ECJ on the basis by which this decision was made.
Member, I think we have belabored the point, and we should move on and allow the minister to respond later.
All right. The last issue that I see in the budget that I would just like some clarity on, the Ministry of Local Government. I understand, I see here that they're relocating the ministry's head office. It's on page 7, 2001.
Yes, Chairman.
Is this they bought this building?
Chairman, somehow the details of this escapes me at this point. This is something that we could also provide the information on.
The reason I asked this question is that the approved estimates for the relocation was 217,014,000.
No,
207,014,000. But that the supplemental estimate is about the same amount of 207,590,000, which, so that the total amount for the relocation so far is $414.6 million. So we'd really like to get some clarity on that. That sounds like a lot of money.
Chairman, may I just correct you there? Okay. The 207 million approved in the estimates in March relates to the direction and management. That's an activity, an entire activity, direction and management, executive direction and administration, general administration, direction and management.
Yes.
The relocation of the ministry's head office is just one item, which is
but it
or
says,
an activity, which will cost 207.5 million.
Okay.
As you know, the location of the office is within a plaza. I recall the case when they were making the case for the relocation. It's in a plaza, a commercial plaza, and access to the office on a busy day in the plaza, staff were were at risk when they worked late, when they were, kept going about their normal business.
This is for the whole ministry?
It's the entire ministry
that
is to be relocated. The head office. The head office.
The head office.
Yes. What is escaping me?
207 million is.
Oh, but it's under rental of property. Let us look at the details of that, Minister.
Yeah.
Chairman. Rental of property, 125, and use of goods and services, 77. So that's where the cost of the relocation would be reflected.
Could we get some clarity on that?
So it would seem as if they are moving to rented premises.
Okay. All right. So it's not the actual cost of renovations, etc.
Well, there is some under Object 25, goods and services, there's 77 million, which would maybe be for retrofitting and, So
Okay.
I don't know.
All right, you can just send in writing some clarity on that. All right, members, I don't know if members have any further questions. All right, so with that, members, I'd like to thank the Ministry of Finance. Mrs. Jarrett, I think it's been a very useful session. And members, what I would like, members, what I would ask is that just before 1 o'clock, I'd ask the members to just come in a little early, 10 to 1, if you first to just sign the report that we have from here, and we'll table it at the Finance Committee. Members, thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
Current affairs, business, sports, culture and the arts. You're watching PBC Jamaica.
If you have information about illegal guns, call 311. Get the guns.